Hey, good morning. Sleep okay? I am on my way to work, and this is how much of an influencer I am not. I don't have a fancy car holder or setup, so you're resting on top of my sat nav, and if this falls on my way to the office, then this video might just end up being all audio. I have decided to start doing something new and trying to center myself in the morning on my way to the office and gain some perspective and just have some quiet alone time. And so I thought I would record just to see what happens to come out today. Today is Thursday, the 30th of April. Tomorrow I leave for a weekend conference in Austin, which most of you know isn't terribly far away, but it is the first time since I've been married that I am leaving. My husband has gone on some far trips, Dallas, Houston, that kind of thing, for a couple of days, but I've always been at home. Okay, see, there we go. I've always been at home with the dogs, and we talk and FaceTime and all the normal things when he's gone, but this is my first time leaving, so I'm a little bit nervous, actually. Not because I think anything is gonna happen, but because I love my husband, and yeah, I like spending as much time with him as is humanly possible. I also love my dogs, and I hate leaving them, and it seems like, not in a bad way, in a very, very good way, because I love my life, but since I met my husband about 3.5 years ago, we have been fortunate enough to take several trips, and the dogs don't always come with us, and so I feel like whenever they see suitcases near the door, even before that, because dogs are intuitive, they start to get a little reticent and a little upset that they know that either Dada or Papa, my husband, is leaving. I also don't know much about this conference that I'm going to. It's a leadership conference that I was invited to attend. I know several people who have gone through it, and they've all said very good things. But if you don't know, I have social panic disorder, and I don't typically like to be in crowds of people where I don't know anybody. At least not without a drink in my hand. But yeah, so there's a little bit of that going on. It's going to be a good day. It's a relatively easy, patient day for me today. Not a whole lot going on at work in preparation for me not being in the office tomorrow. What is going on? I have relaunched DrLuke.online, which is my official site. Again, I am not trying to be an influencer. I don't want to be famous. I'm not trying to post a bunch of content every day and going for likes and subscribers and trying to make money. It started several years ago, I think in 2000, as a therapeutic tool that was recommended to me as a patient. When I started The Cope, which was my podcast talking about depression and suicidal thoughts and how you navigate those, or how I navigate those, rather. And I've always liked writing, so there are some articles that I've written. I'm trying to make it a habit for me personally, because it really does help me cope. But I've noticed that life, as it does, tends to get in the way, and even a goal of publishing once a month has gotten away from me. And it was surprising yesterday. I knew it had been a while, but it was surprising yesterday to log on to my podcast site and see that I haven't posted since September. It didn't feel like over 6 months. It felt like a while, but not quite that long. But anyway, that's the goal. I don't know how much of that I'll be able to get to this weekend with this leadership conference, but I'll certainly try. I've been thinking a little bit about how to explain what it is that I do and why it's different. Functional psychology is important to me because of really how it's impacted my life directly. When I was going to the doctor's office a long time ago, probably in my mid to late 20s, to get help for anxiety and depression and insomnia, it was very, very easy for my family care doctor at the time to just say that he could handle it, he could manage it for me. And so I immediately got put on 40 milligrams of fluoxetine or Prozac and 2 milligrams of alprazolam or Xanax for anxiety and insomnia. So some of you may already be familiar with that class of medication, benzodiazepine. They are effective treatments for anxiety, but not without complications and not without dangers. Starting at 2 milligrams is just so ridiculously inappropriate, but I had no idea at the time that that was about 8 times the dose that I should have started at. So most patients will start at about 0.25 or a quarter of a milligram or 0.5 or half of a milligram. I was at 2 whole milligrams every day, and I very quickly became dependent on it. I couldn't sleep without taking a Xanax before bed. And so that was a pretty slippery slope for the next couple of years. It actually ended up making my anxiety worse because when I would try to not take the Xanax to sleep, I would toss and turn and go back to the usual insomnia. But I began noticing that during the day, I was starting to have less ability to dissociate or detach from stress, and I started having panic attacks. And I started counseling, which my primary doctor never required. He was very happy to. He was a great doctor. I'm not trying to talk badly about him. I appreciate everything that he did for me, but primary care doctors are just naturally inclined to overmanage a patient's care. And anyway, he and I never had a conversation about me needing to see a therapist. And so at the end of my period of addiction, which lasted a very, very long time and went from pills and alcohol to alcohol and marijuana to alcohol, marijuana, and cocaine. I've talked a bit about this on my blog and in my podcast, so it's not news to most of you. In that 10 to 15 years, I ended up getting 2 DWIs. Fortunately, I never hurt anybody else. I didn't hurt myself. That's arguable. But part of my supervised release or probation was that I had to start therapy. I managed to get through probation, seeing their recommended therapists. There was kind of group program that they made me go through, and then individual counseling. The counselor was terrible. Like, couldn't have been less in tune with what my issues were. We talked a lot about addiction, which in hindsight, maybe I can see why that was the direction he took. But he did a lot of focusing in our sessions together, problem, quote unquote, with marijuana. And I wasn't really using that much marijuana. I wasn't really the issue. The issue was that I was severely depressed. I had checked out of life. I no longer cared what happened to me, whether I lived or died, or it was just a really dark period of time in my life. And we didn't get into any of that, despite meeting, I think, once a week or once every other week. So, long story short, I successfully completed probation. I finished those therapy programs, and then afterwards realized it's probably a good idea if I start looking for a therapist of my own. Met with a couple of different people. They were fine. They weren't unhelpful, but I didn't feel like I could tell them everything. And the therapeutic relationship, the counselor, therapist, psychologist, patient relationship is all built on trust. If you as the patient or client don't trust your therapist, you're not going to be completely honest with them. That only undercuts your ability to heal. So, bounced around. It probably was my third or fourth therapist where I finally clicked with somebody. Maybe it was a combination of his brutal honesty, or our complete opposite viewpoints of life, or me just being completely exhausted and needing to talk to somebody and being tired of running away. But whatever it was, Scott, how are you? Thanks so much for changing my life. The person that I ended up connecting with was the least likely person I would have ever imagined. He was an older white man, probably in his 60s, Republican, conservative, and his personal religious beliefs were such that he thought homosexuality was a sin. But despite all of that, one of the first things he said was, I'm not here to judge you, and it doesn't matter what my opinions are. And so that was disarming in a way I was probably not prepared for, and allowed me to just let it all out. So he was also incredibly helpful. He was a therapist, so he did not prescribe medication. I did not feel like I needed medication at that time. Shortly after, things got better, and so I stopped going. And then in my late 30s is when Dr. Guillory, who was an emergency physician and owner of some of the standalone ERs that I was pulling shifts in as a medic, invited me to leave the emergency room, and tour the facility and join his private practice. I didn't know anything about functional medicine. I knew nothing about functional psychology. And so I agreed to the meeting. I toured the facility, and then because I really didn't know what I would be getting into, I thanked him for his time, but I politely declined. About 6 months later or so, he called again and said, I really want you to consider coming to work with me. And by that time, I had learned a little bit more about functional psychology. I had not yet finished my PsyD program. So I joined the practice as a medic while I was working toward becoming a psychologist. That was 6 years ago. And it wasn't until I met Charlotte, one of the nurse practitioners, and began discussing my medical history, and it was her who kind of got to the root cause, not to put too fine a point on it, of what part of my issue was. There were some psychological things, but part of the reason why therapy and working on them on my own wasn't sticking quite the way that I wanted it to is because there were other things going on in my body that were not being addressed. My vitamin D level, for example, was in the very, very low 20s, and optimally we like to see that, especially in functional medicine, we like to see it closer to 100. And vitamin D is responsible for all kinds of things. For mood stabilization, for sleep, even for metabolism and helping to drop weight. And so just being put on a high-dose vitamin D supplement after that initial visit, within probably 2 or 3 days, it wasn't very long, I was already starting to sleep better. Just felt better in a way that antidepressants and benzodiazepines never. So, that was the long way around of explaining functional psychology. Functional psychology isn't just about feelings. It is about what's going on in your mind, but it also is about what's going on in your body, what's going on outside your body, in your environment. And so we talk about emotional and spiritual health, we talk about faith, we talk about what it means for your body to be nourished properly, we talk about sleep and grounding and energy and attitude. It's a much more comprehensive approach to psychology that, for me, makes much more sense, because medication is not always the answer, or at least external medication is not always the answer. Like we say at Root Causes, you are the medicine. I am the medicine. The power to heal my body is already within me. I just have to tap in. So yeah, after my PsyD program, I decided that during my PsyD program, I decided that functional psychology, functional integrative psychology is where I wanted to be. And so I don't spend my days diagnosing patients with mental health issues or mental health conditions. I spend my days listening to them and helping them make the connection between their brain and their body and their environment and their spirit, helping them feel better that way. All of the different ways that I've been involved in medicine over the years, this feels the most right. So if you're interested, go to DrLuke.online. There you'll find episodes of The Cope, my podcast. You'll also find the beginning of my blog. I haven't transferred all of my entries over just yet. It's gone through a couple of different iterations. Initially it was called In the Middle of Nowhere. Right now it's called My Life as a Class. It's about to be updated again, and I think the name I've settled on is Not a Well Man. But yeah, I am getting ready to get to the office, so I'm going to stop there. I hope you have an amazing day, and I am going to buy a phone holder. Don't have to worry about this falling over every time, and we'll see how many different rides to work I can record. It's that. So I see you, I hear you, I appreciate you, I love you. Maybe we'll end with Ho'oponopono. Thank you. Forgive you. Please forgive me. And I'll see you next time.